Welcome back to this very special Indianomics where we are discussing the newly published autobiography of former RBI Governor, Dr. C.Rangarajan. By most estimates, Dr. Rangarajan was governor during the most eventful period of RBI's 85 years, the years 92 to 97. Dr. Rangarajan, thank you for waiting on. I'm coming back to the questions on the 92-97 period again. But before that, we were talking about the MPC. At the moment, the external members of the MPC believe that theirs is a domestic mandate to bring down inflation. But RBI is a full-service central bank and has to worry on the fact that the Fed is hiking rates in a hurry. And there is an interest rate differential which can have an impact on the currency. There is also a current account deficit which is running close to 3%. So do you think interest rates will have to be thought of not just for inflation?
No, it so happens at the present moment, the action required to take care of the external problem, that is to prevent a very sharp deterioration in the value of the rupee, also coincides with the measure necessary to bring down inflation. It is not a conflict that you are seeing. Therefore, in my opinion, the objective of trying to bring down inflation coincides with the objective of also acting on the very external value of the rupee. To me, it happens to be one instance in which there is no conflict of action.
I agree with you, though it appears that some of the members of the MPC in their previous minutes sounded a bit dovish. There is another part in your ruminations chapter, the last chapter, where you are worrying about growth. You point out that, the reforms did usher in a higher level of growth. From 3.5%, we came to 5 to 6% and then to 7 to 8% in the 2000s. But you're worrying that that trend is speaking off?
Yes, I think as I point out in the book, the reforms should normally create a climate for investment, a climate for accelerated growth. Post 2011-12, the growth rate of the economy has been sliding. Initially, one could understand it because there is always a cyclical phenomenon in every economy. When an economy reaches the peak, and then for a time, the economy also slides. But it has continued for a longer time. Perhaps the downturn could have been managed better. One significant thing that has happened is post 2011-12, the investment rate has been coming down. And that is really the key for economic growth. Therefore, the investment is the driver of economic growth. We need to address this issue quite strongly. The investment rate now, or the gross fixed capital formation rate, is only about 28.8%. But we were at one time well beyond 33%. But even beyond 2012-13, it was 33%. It's a significant decline from that. Therefore, my concern is that while normally reforms should be creating an appropriate climate for investment, it has not happened. And therefore, while reforms create the necessary conditions for economic growth, but they are not sufficient. We need to really operate the system in such a way that the appropriate investment climate is nurtured, and it requires macro level and sector-wise level concentration of ideas.
You actually refer to a great deal to even social cohesion and whether that is lack of social cohesion is impeding investment. I wish I had the time to discuss that as well. But let me come to the issue of bank public sector bank and their listing. I remember during those times you had, I think it was you who had once told us that when you asked for the listing of the banks, divestment of government stake from 100 to maybe 90 or 85, there was a lot of political opposition?
Yes, I mean, the political system attaches a great deal of importance to nationalization of the earlier private banks, and therefore reducing the government holding in the public sector banks from 100% to 51% was itself a great effort. We really had to persuade the members of parliament to agree to this idea, because we thought that among many other things that we were planning to do in order to increase the competitive environment in the banking system, this is also important. Therefore, in my opinion, apart from allowing new private sector banks to come in, another significant step that was taken at that time was to reduce the ownership of the government to 51%. Of course, 51% clearly makes it that it is a public sector bank, in the sense that the management of the bank is entirely in the hands of the government.
That's a fair point. I mean, and here's where we have, I would have liked to get your views on privatization of public sector banks, which doesn't seem to be going anywhere, but we may not have time for that. I wanted to ask you about another point which I didn't see much in your ruminations chapter. Do you worry that growth, you of course spoke about, you have a whole subsection on poverty and its calculation and its reduction. Do you worry that growth is getting stymied because of what people are calling the K-shaped recovery? We've become way more unequal after COVID and in the last few years, which could be impeding growth, you think? Do you buy that we have become a more iniquitous society?
I have a different view on this. The point that I would like to stress is that in the early stages of economic growth, the focus of attention should be not so much the inequality of income, as much as what is happening to the poverty ratio in the country. As you can see, that poverty ratio may be coming down, but measured by some of the inequality indicators, the inequality may be increased. Therefore, the significant thing that we need to do is really to get the poverty ratio down. And one important thing that happened in the high growth period between 2005-06 and 2011-12 was the substantial reduction in the poverty ratio. High growth supported by social safety nets can really bring the poverty ratio down. I am afraid that since the growth rate has slowed down after 2011-12, and as a consequence of it, perhaps the poverty ratio is not coming down in the way in which it was coming down during the earlier period. Perhaps it may have also increased. It is that is the one that we need to worry about. High growth gives two opportunities. One, there is a trickle-down effect anyway. May not be that strong. It depends upon how the growth process takes shape. But another thing, the higher the rate of growth of the economy, the higher the resources that are available to the government, and therefore the capability to install and provide social safety nets increases. Look at it. It is the period during 2005-06 to the 2011-12, we introduced the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. The extended food security system was also introduced during that period. Therefore, high growth accompanied by a policy of installing social safety nets will bring down the poverty ratio. And I would really emphasize that the focus of attention now must be on poverty ratio.
Well, it is, I guess, because the government has the Pradhan Mantri Anna Yojana. So they are paying some attention to that. Maybe I should squeeze one last question, sir. You are speaking about states should be given the right for income tax. Are you in favor of it? You discuss it at one point.
See, the point really is that we are all discussing about how the vertical imbalance can be filled and how certain states have to be given additional support because of the status of the states in terms of per capita income. But one idea is, can we increase the ability of the state governments to tax more, and therefore the question or the need for correcting the vertical imbalances may come down. It is in that context I felt that, yes, there are many other countries in the world where the states, besides the federal government, is also being given the power to levy income tax. But I must also say this, that even in the United States, the power to levy income tax is given to states, that many states do not levy it because of the competition among states, not to make it costly for enterprises to run. But always, even in the United States, it's a very simple mechanism. They don't have any separate rules on exemption limit and so on and so forth. What they do is they take the taxable income as determined by the rules of the federal government and add a tax on it. Therefore, the return that you file for the state government is only one page. It starts with what the federal income tax regime says, and on it, yes, a certain percentage is levied on it. I think it is worth looking at it, but it should not essentially be made very onerous. But the very fact that the state governments can differ in the rate of taxation may compel them not to overdo it. But it is an idea which I think is worth looking at.
Well, Dr. Rangarajan, out of time, but it was a pleasure reading your book and an even greater pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining me, and from all of us at CNBC TV18, we wish you a very healthy future.
Thank you very much, Lata. Thank you.